everything, and you've got to earn respect from a child. You can't just take for granted that he's going to respect you. And children this day and time don't respect father and mother. And if they don't respect father and mother, you need to expect them to respect you.
That's right.
You have to get down and really earn your respect from that child to get it. But I know my father always corrected me, and he's corrected when I was small, and he didn't ruin my personality.
It improves them a lot of
He
times.
improved a lot of it. He impressed on me that thing that was right and moral, and the things that was right, the standard we have of honesty and our moral obligation to people, and the standards that have the old standards are still just as true today as they were when I was going to school.
When
I
you
know
started teaching, y'all taught a lot, on morals and things, didn't
Sure,
you?
we did. We'd do
Yes,
that.
and-
And you'd have to impress a little one. Now, I had one little boy in school, and he would steal the things right off of your eyes. And you're looking when he started school in the first grade. And I began to search that little old boy's life at home and just find out all I could about him. And he was never given any money of his own. He was never trusted. And you just have to do something. So to break him from stealing, I didn't correct him by whipping him or punishing him, but I corrected him by sending him to the store to get things and give him money, and I'd always let him have some out of every bit of money that I had. I'd always tell him he could get that much money. He could have so much money to get him, buy him something. Mm-hmm. And he was one of as good a children as I had in school before school as that was, just because I understood his problem. He didn't have any money. They didn't trust him with anything, and I had to learn teach him that I was trusting him, going buy for me and then bring it back. And he would. He'd go to the store and send him a lot of times. Just a lot of times when really I didn't need it, I'd just decide, well, today I need to keep building that confidence in that child that I had in him, and that he'd have in himself to go and do these things. And so he overcome that stealing.
When you first started teaching, did religion play? Was there Bible reading and things then that they're trying to stop now?
Yes, we didn't have any trouble with that. We'd have Bible reading. It went in when I was teaching with, say we had to upgrade the first 2 or 3 years that I was teaching that. Or when I was teaching first grade, I let them, if they wanted to, give a Bible verse, if they wanted to, for devotional every morning. We'd have that. And then we'd have prayer. We could have prayer without any disturbance, whatever, That wasn't even mentioned. We just thought that was just part of the day's work.
People didn't complain.
People didn't complain. No, there wasn't anybody objected to that whenever I started teaching. And then not even when I retired, I hadn't had that in mind.
Did the children have books then? State issued books?
Yes.
Or they just
At first they didn't have when I first started teaching, but then it came to a period where they did have the books. You could buy the books. They could buy books. And I didn't ever have much complaint when they'd have to buy books. They'd buy the books because they thought that was it. But then after a while they got so they would furnish the books. And I would always when they started furnishing the books, I'd always pick up every set of books that I could get and put them down there. I don't know how many set of books I left down there at school when I retired. Because I just had more books than most any of them. I never refused to get the books. And then sometimes we'd have books and you'd have to have a little workbook to go along. Well, I got to the place where people would they didn't think they could afford a workbook, and if they didn't, I'd always buy that workbook for that child. I always saw that I always saw that my children had food when he is in school. I always saw that child, if I made him come to school, I couldn't make him come to school with a clear conscience if he didn't have clothes fit for the weather. And you could always tell the first cold spell come, you could always tell how many clothes that child's going to have. And it wasn't any trouble at all. You didn't have to say, Johnny, do you have this and that and the other, but you could just bring Johnny up to your desk and just put your hands on his little old body. And you know he'd have on all the clothes he'd have on. And a lot of times they'd just have on one little shirt and a little pair of pants. And then sometimes shoes and socks. And if he didn't have on extra clothes, and I knew that they couldn't get extra clothes, I'd always send them. My community was always good to me to help me supply. I'd always send word out to people who had little boys and girls, that they'd outgrown theirs. If they didn't send any, then that was up to me. My responsibility was to see them that they had clothes that would keep them warm. And I had one little boy to come to school one morning, and he had on a little sweater. And I don't think you could put your finger anywhere but what hadn't been a hole. And his mama, it was a little blue sweater, and his mama washed it with the white towels. And he had as much lint on that little sweater as he had sweater. So that afternoon, I knew that was about the best he had, and I couldn't have it better. So I went then to get him after school when I'd hit the store. And I wanted him to have some good warm clothes so he didn't have any underwear and things. So I went out to Miss Stillbeck's. I said, I want 3 suits of underwear for a child about 8 years old. And I want some shirts, and I want a sweater. And so I went back, carried them next morning, and dressed that little boy up. And Miss Stillbeck said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give him she had some shoes. She said, I'll give him a pair of shoes or slippers that she had down the store. And we got him 3 pair of socks, some shoes, dressed him up. Then I had one of the teachers come along to tell me the next morning that she hoped that I enjoyed buying the things, for this child because his daddy and mama bought a television the day before, I said, that suits me just fine because he'll be warm and comfortable while he's enjoying television. I never did look behind the child. I never did let anything take off what Mom and Daddy did. If they didn't, I always looked for that child to take care of that child.
Because it's not the child's fault.
No, it wasn't the child's fault. He didn't ask to be born into that family, and he didn't ask them to be their parents. And he would like to have had things, and I think it paid off 100-fold for every one that I bought.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it did.
I know I received blessings from it.
I know it did. Right. Did you miss? I know you told me last year that when I came up here Halloween, I asked you if you remembered me, and you told me, by my eyes.
Yes, I remember. And I remember a lot of my children.
That has just amazed me ever since then. I thought, hello.
A lot of times I can look at children and I look at their eyes,
mm-hmm.
and I can give you a name. I might give you a last name. I might not can remember your
mm-hmm.
first name, but I can remember that last name, but I put that name on. I had a boy that I'd had in school, and I hadn't seen him for 40 years. And he came back, and he stepped up on the steps, and another boy that went to school with him was with him, and he said, I want to see if you can put a name on this boy right here. And he lived up north. And I looked at him a little bit. I said, I can give him his last name. His last name is Martin. But to give him the first name, I don't believe I could put the first name on him right now. And he said, well, his name is Tommy. I said, yeah, that's exactly right, Tommy. that I had a little old boy another little old boy that had been to school to me, and he looked at me and then said, "Well, do you know who this one is?" And I said, "Yes, I remembered that one." And I could give the last name, but I couldn't give the first one. I've had a lot of children to come back to see me that been gone 25 and 30 years, and it's just a joy to have them come and talk about things that were pleasant in school.
Oh, yeah.
That makes my day.
Mm-hmm. When this school burned out here, was it during the time that
Oh,
during the
yes.
school year?
Yes, we were in school, and I finished that school out, and 2 or 3 hours worked at the Baptist church. 2 or 3 of them worked at the Methodist church. And so we had to finish out that school year. And got that.
What about everything burned?
Oh, yes, everything burned. So we were really handicapped. We just had to do the best we could,
Didn't really have any materials or
Didn't
books
have
or
to do
anything?
nothing. No, everything in the world burned. They didn't save nothing from that school. No books, no equipment of any kind. So we just had to do the best we could do to make shifts. And then it was awfully disturbing to try to teach a class in the first grade, and maybe a fifth grade teacher right over here teaching it.
Mm-hmm.
Our voices would go, it would detract.
I know that was hard to have to do
Yes.
that.
But we finished it out, and then the next year we got to move in a new building.
That was nice.
Yeah. And I had a time with that new building because the heat, they didn't adjust the heat right. We had heat, and the heat was all going up in the upper building, and down on the floor was as cold as ice. And I'd have people to come, they'd say, well, I'd complain about my little children were cold. I knew they didn't have on, some of them didn't have sufficient clothing, to sit down. And it was concrete floor, and it was cold as ice. See, it'd be cold well next to the floor, but you could get up. And they'd say, well, Miss Chambers, they'd look at the wall, and they'd say, Miss Chambers, it says 72. I said, but we're not hanging on the wall.
Well, when you first started teaching, though, what, you had, like, wood stoves?
Oh, yes,
coal?
we had wood and coal. Mm-hmm. We had wood the first year that I taught. But I didn't have it in trouble with that. They kept us plenty of wood. Didn't have a bit of trouble keeping wood, and I didn't have any trouble keeping fires because those big boys that I had the first year, I could keep fires, and they keep that. So we didn't have a problem there.
And of course, there was no air conditioning.
No air conditioner, no air conditioning.
There wasn't when I was still in school.
And we worked in the summer when divided term, you see, for years. That year when I at Dutton, Alabama.
Oh, really?
We'd work in July and August, and the hottest weather you could have, and then we'd vacate for cotton picking and go on, and we didn't have no air conditioning. We'd just raise the window and use the natural good air, fresh air coming in, Of course, I'm sure it was hot.
People think now they can't live.
Oh, Lord, they can't live without an air conditioner. That's right. They gripe about it if the power goes off of the air conditioner. They just are dying. They're just a dying and dying. They're softest now, I tell you they are.
Really, they are. Really.
Sure, people are soft. Yeah, that's it.
Now that all these snow days, kids walked in, but they
Yes, kids would come to school in rainy days, and these children would come to school rainy days back then, several years ago when I was teaching, and they'd have to walk 2 and 3 miles to come to school from around here. Now you may not believe that, but they'd be there. Yes, they'd be to school. And one morning a little girl came in, and she looked like a drowning rat. She had her little old dress was so wet, and it was a little thin dress, and I happened to have some little tom-tom suits there that we'd had a little play, with toms, and I dressed her up in one of those little suits while I could dry her clothes, and I put them on this. We had a great big old heater it had a jacket that went all the way around it, and I hung the the little skirt, it was a little flared skirt, you know, wide around, thin material though. And so I hung it up there, and I got busy, and somebody came in and put some extra coal in my stove, and I didn't notice, you know, about it, and then forgot all about it, and burned all the tail off that little girl's dress. When I got to that little girl, it had just fell off, you know, the inside of the stove just burned and fell off. And she just had the little waist, was all she had of her dress. And I sent out to one of the neighbors, to Miss Goggins, and told her to send me some clothes for that little girl. She had a little girl about her age, and I said, I've just burned the clothes up, and you dried them on the stove.
Did they have an NEA or PTA?
Oh, they tried to have a PTA then, and didn't have a PTA long back yonder. We called it PTA.
Uh-huh.
Yes, we had a PTA down here at school.
I wondered, I didn't know it.
But now we didn't get too much done through the PTA because, well, I guess I looked after, but it was mostly that PTA was looking to take care of these that were up here ready to go out, trying to hold them in instead of taking care of these little ones coming in, you see.
Mm-hmm.
These little ones had to go to school. These old ones were going to lose. You see, our school, at one time, it Dutton taught through the 11th grade.
Mm-hmm.
We had home economics and everything. Then it dropped down. Now it's down to, I reckon, the 8th grade. They made it use the 8th and then the 12th.
So many times I wish they had made it a high school.
Yes, well, really it would have taken a lot of money to get to get a high school to keep it going.
I would really like to have finished up here. That's home to me. That's my school.
But I have little boys and girls that go from here to go to section, you know.
Uh-huh.
And of course they have FFH and FFA. And so I know that there are boys and girls too that go in those classes that don't have the money to go in. So I try to make part of my donation to go to that class section.
That's nice.
Yeah. Because they always ask me to come to their banquets, you know, and all. And I said, well, I could always give them a donation that would put money in their treasure that would take care of these children that didn't have the money to do with it. We still have some people that don't have money.
Yeah.
Not everybody has a little bit of money. Now you just don't find people that don't have some money, because they just manage to have some money. And but they don't have enough money to cover all of the needs maybe of that child going to school. It takes a lot of money for a child to go to school.
More expensive now.
Sure it is.
Like when you taught really the kids, I know I've heard moms say like,
They
it's
were-
got one pair of shoes a year.
Why, sure, that's right.
Things like that instead of having so many now.
Yeah, they do. They have some just have lots shoes. Some just have one or two.
And kids that many years ago didn't have.
But now, well, they use a lot of times now they can get by. But now they'll use tennis shoes.
Mm-hmm.
But a good pair of tennis shoes will cost you a fortune. And Miss Stringer, and it costs you a lot for a pair of tennis shoes.
It sure does.
I know this little boy last year needed a pair of shoes, and they didn't have the money to get that pair of shoes, and I sent him, gave him some money. I said, I'll buy you a pair of shoes. And so he went up here to Isle of Marsh's to get shoes, you know, and his shoes cost him $31 and something like that. And it was it kind of shocked me. I never bought shoes, you know, here recently for children. And it cost $31 for a pair of shoes.
A lot. What to you really has changed the most in our society? That was
To care less for people. If I have plenty for me and mine, I'm not much interested in you and yours.
that's right. That's what I'm supposed to feel.
Absolutely, that's the way to be. And they just don't, we don't have compassion for people.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that love for people like you used to have.
No, it's that, a lot of it.
And then another thing has changed. People don't hold on to the true values of life like they used to.
Mm-hmm.
No, and they don't change either.
No.
No, they don't change. The things that's honest, decent, and looking after your neighbor if he needs help and all that. Well, they don't do that.
And people years ago, when that was,
Would. Yes, sir.
I always wanted to make sure.
I can remember very well, even while I was teaching, that we would dismiss maybe a school I had today to go help somebody pick up. Now, you wouldn't think about doing things like that now.
Oh, no.
No, you wouldn't think about things like that. And I'd go with those children when they'd go, because I felt like that. But now, and somebody gets sick in the community, you'd see that they had the needs they needed. But you see, we've had welfare, and that's ruined people. That's ruined people. Because this has happened too, and I've had a feud in Huntsville when I was working with Head Start. I had to go to a workshop down there. And we had a group of people that came from Mississippi, about 76 of them were the blacks, and they thought they were just discriminated against, and they had done without, and all like that. And in a class that I had there, the lady got up, one of the black teachers got up, and she told how hard it was to get food and clothing for children. And when she got through, I took the stand. I said, it's not indifferent to mine. I've had that in my room. And I saw my own problem. I would send out and ask people to send me clothes that their children had outgrown. And so I would get relief that way, and if I didn't, I just put it down in my pocket and bought it for them. And they didn't have this and they didn't have that. I said, you have to work for it. You can't, it's not handed out to you. You have to work for those things.
That's right.
Look after it. But now people don't work. That's what I thought about my first grade when I left them.
Yeah. And you've been retired how many years?
I retired in 1970. This is now about 15 years.
It's 15.
Yeah, 15 years I've retired.
Do you miss it a lot first?
Oh, I still miss
Still
it.
miss it now?
Yeah, I still miss it. I went down there, at first I'd go see them every so often, and then the first grade teacher would bring them up to see me, And I could look at the family, I wouldn't know, the children, but I know the features of that child, that you belong in a certain family.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, they'd come to see me. And they'd bring me a bouquet, sometimes. And one time I came in, we had a restaurant down here, and they sold ice cream. And so I told them, I said, I'm going to give you told the teacher, I said, I'm going to give you some money, and you just go down by there and buy all of some ice cream as you go there's on the way, and you buy them ice cream on the way home. And she said, all right. And the little boy went home and told his mama, said, Mama, you know what? And she said, no, what? She said, Miss Chambers gave us $500 to get some ice cream today. I said, that was some cream.
$500.
$500, yeah. I said, $500. And then that lady passed with that child one day, and he said, and that's where Miss Chambers lived, that gave us $500 for ice cream.
To you, do you think kids have changed? I mean, from the time you started teaching till you retired?
No, I think you could go back with
changing?
first grade. I think I could go back with first grade, and I think I could pick them up, and I believe I could do just exactly what I did with them then. But there's a knack in getting a hold of that first grade child.
Mm-hmm.
You can lead them clear off of the bluff if you want to. I've had mamas to tell me they were jealous of me because, and she's ashamed of it. She said, honest to goodness, I'm ashamed to tell you, but I was jealous because they tell me I'd want them to do something. They said, don't do it that way because that's not the way Miss Chambers does it. And she said, then I'd have them go say, hey, what's she doing, trying to take my kids away from me? I told her when she told me, I said, no, I wasn't trying to take your kids away from you. I was just trying to get right next to them so they do everything I asked them to do.
Well, I've heard people say, that kids, well, I even know myself, I've said it even since I've gotten older, kids have changed. But I just wondered,
No,
years
I
that you
don't think
taught,
children change.
till you
Hey,
get
a lot of these children now, I'll tell you what they are, they're selfish. But now we teach them to be selfish. That's from home. You teach that child to be selfish.
Really, I don't guess the kids have changed. It's their environment.
It's just the environment's changed. You have some children that just have plenty of running over, but they don't think about that child that's hungry. But if you get a hold of that child and could have him to see, he would respond to you. Excuse me.
You think maybe it's like when you first started teaching, I guess most of the kids, most of them had about the same thing, didn't they?
Yes, that's right. They were all just about on the same level.
And then now
and you see some people have gone off and worked. Some parents have gone away from home and worked away from home. The fathers have on big money. And they've accumulated, you see, and some haven't. We have some that's just about the same as they were when I started. It's just and put out and pushed, to accumulate anything. But they don't share like they won't share. They've changed that way, but it's not that child, it's that home. It's environment home. It's just like this now you see they wouldn't mind me to they tell me, if you couldn't get a child to wake up in the first grade, and I've had several that just wouldn't ever wake up as long as well, I couldn't sit there and let that child, when I knew he was a smart child, just sit in my room and do nothing all the time. And I'd say, I've just got to wake him up.
Mm-hmm.
I've just got to. Well, I had one time when the little boy that's going to school, he was capable of doing anything, and he just looked over at me and I said, now it's time you began to work. Take copy of this work that's on the board. You're going to make numbers, and I've had you held your hand and showed you how to do all this. You know everything about it, and I'm ready for you to put it down on paper. And he looked right across the table, the desk at me. And he says, I don't intend to do it. Well, he was used to talking to his mama like that, I'm sure, but I got up and I said, you see this little ruler? I had a ruler now, 12 long, and you know what a ruler is. Mm-hmm. And I said, you just get right busy with that because you just got to do it, David. And so he said, but I'm not going to do it. And I just kind of spanked him one or two little pops on his little legs between his knee and his ankle, that part. And I just did that, and I said, now you just get busy do it because I'm going to be the boss in you. And I had made a good student out of it.
Yeah, just get that.
And then I had another little boy that's like that, and he was just sitting, and his mama came over. I told his sister, I said, you tell your mom I'm just going to have to wake your little brother up because he's going to sit here and just sit and daydream all day, and listen to me instead of working, trying to do, and so I'm going to have to wake him up too. And that afternoon I had his mother, she said, oh, I want you to, but I sure do hate you. I said, I can't just put up his hand, pour it in his head, And, but I said, I won't beat him to death. Mm-hmm. But I've got to wake him up. And I did wake him up, but I just kind of shocked him a little bit, I said, now you just got to go to work. That's all there is to it. You just got to go to work. And try. You've got to try. You're not trying. You just got to try. So he made me a good student. Though they always told me when I'd had to correct a child and, bring him up and correct him, I said, I'm doing this because I love you. Mm-hmm. And they'd say, how in the world could she love us and then punish us at the same time? You know, they couldn't understand that. They'd say, how do she love us? I said, I do. If I didn't love you, I'd just let you grow up like a weed. But I'm not going to let you grow up like a weed. You got to learn to grow up. Bring the best out.
That's right. You have to make it do.
Make them do, that's right. And I'll tell you one thing, the child that you have to really come across and listen to you and mind will appreciate you pulling him in line more than if you just let him flop around and do what he wants to. Now that's right.
Maybe not then, but as they get older, they will.
I've had first grade children to come. I have one in particular I think about now, and I'd say, now you can't pull that little girl's hair. He'd say, I can. And I said, you can't pin some up here. I just don't like this. Is just a big family in here, you know. And you can't do this. And so he'd say, but I can't.